On the morning the whole county emptied its bins for record wheat prices, Elias Mercer nailed a new lock onto an abandoned feed mill. Not a bank vault, not a new tractor shed, a rotting feed mill with a sagging roof, broken windows, and weeds growing through the loading dock. Across the road, trucks rolled past him in a silver line, hauling wheat toward the new processing plant that had turned the county rich almost overnight. The younger farmers laughed from their cabs. One of them shouted that Elias was storing grain like a man afraid of the future. Elias looked at the price board glowing outside the elevator office. Then he looked at the cracked roof above his mill. And he said only one thing. A price board is not a roof. Nobody understood what he meant, not then. For most of his life, Elias had been the kind of farmer people politely ignored. He lived outside the prairie town of Bellwether, in a white farmhouse whose paint had peeled long before anyone bothered to repaint the church sign. Every morning before sunrise, he walked his fence lines, checked his water tanks, fixed whatever old machine had failed in the night, and wrote small notes in a black ledger he kept beside the kitchen stove. He did not buy the biggest combine. He did not rent extra land every time prices rose. He did not talk loudly in the cafe about yields, acres, or how much a man could borrow if he believed in growth. After each harvest, Elias sold enough wheat to pay taxes, fuel, seed, and the few things a quiet house required. The rest stayed in his bins. That habit made him a joke. To the ambitious farmers, stored grain was dead money. To the lenders, it was supply being held out of the market. To the new generation, it was proof that Elias Mercer had grown old inside a world that had moved on without him. Then came 2 perfect years. Spring rain arrived exactly when the seedlings needed it. Summer heat never burned too long. Rust never spread. Hail missed the county by miles. The winter wheat came up heavy, clean, and bright. For 2 seasons, Bellwether produced the kind of harvest men brag about for the rest of their lives. At the same time, Northern Plains Protein finished building a giant wheat processing plant beside the rail spur. The company needed grain. A lot of it. And to guarantee supply, it began offering contracts nearly 30% above the ordinary cash price. That was all it took. The whole county changed its religion. Men who had once spoken about weather now spoke about leverage. Neighbors who used to compare rainfall compared interest rates. The cafe chalkboard, once used for lunch specials, became a place where people wrote contract prices like scripture. Farmers borrowed against land their grandparents had struggled to keep. They bought air seeders wider than their old barns. They rented pasture, and broke it into wheat ground. They sold old reserves because holding grain felt foolish when trucks were paying cash every hour of the day. And in the middle of that fever, Elias kept locking grain away. At first, people only laughed. Then they started to resent him. The manager of Harbor Credit, a polished man named Graham Voss, disliked Elias most of all. Voss had helped finance half the county's expansion. He sat on the development board that celebrated the processing plant, and every bushel Elias refused to sell felt to him like disobedience. When Elias's bins finally filled from floor to roof, he did something that made the whole town shake its head. He went to the county auction and bought the abandoned feed mill beside the old rail siding. The building was worth almost nothing. The roof leaked. The grain leg was frozen with rust. The loading doors hung crooked on their hinges. The opening bid was $1,500. Elias raised his card. Before the auctioneer could breathe, another card went up from the back of the room. Graham Voss. The price climbed past $3,000, then $6,000, then $10,000. By the time it crossed $14,000, the room had gone quiet. Everyone knew what was happening. Voss was not buying a feed mill. He was trying to make an old man quit in public. Elias stood with his hat pressed against his chest, eyes fixed on the auctioneer. He had saved for years by buying almost nothing he did not need. At $14,600, he lifted his card one last time. The hammer fell. And the county decided Elias Mercer had finally lost his mind. For the next month, people drove by the old mill just to watch the foolishness. Elias patched the roof with used metal sheets. He boarded the windows. He poured concrete under the sagging posts. He cleaned out rat nests, replaced belts, hung new locks, and swept the old floor until the dust rose like smoke in the afternoon light. Then the delivery trucks began arriving, not only grain trucks, water tanks, canning jars, salt, dried beans, hand tools, kerosene lamps, spare belts, canvas sacks, a small, stone burr mill, a grain dryer old enough to have outlived 3 owners, but still honest enough to run. The town turned it into a story for entertainment. At church suppers, they said Elias was building a museum for fear. At the cafe, they said he had mistaken a boom for the end of the world. Voss told clients that old farmers often confused caution with wisdom, and that men who could not accept change should not be models for a modern county. Elias never answered, he only kept working. Then the new planting season began. The county moved like an army, more land went under wheat than anyone had ever seen. Loans were signed before seed was delivered. The new plant offered forward contracts so generous that farmers pledged grain not yet grown from fields not yet sprouted. Men who had mocked risk now treated risk like a ladder. And that was when Elias made the choice that silenced even the cafe. He did not plant most of his wheat ground. He left several of his best fields under cover crop and stubble. He repaired terraces instead of breaking new land. He spent mornings at the mill, running stored wheat through dryers, cleaners, grinders, and sealers. Every day, the machines coughed awake before sunrise. Wheat became flour, cracked grain became livestock feed, seed-grade sacks were sealed and dated. Barrels of water were stacked against the north wall, where the light stayed cool. To everyone else, this was madness. The price had never been better, the plant had never been hungrier. The county had never been more confident. But Elias was not watching the price board anymore. He was watching the sky. 1 month after planting, the rain stopped. At first, nobody panicked. Dry spells happened. The county had seen them before, the wheat had roots. The forecasters still spoke carefully. The plant still needed grain. Then the heat settled in. Not a hot week, not a bad stretch. A white, breathless dome of heat pressed over bellwether and refused to move. Ponds shrank into rings of cracked mud, irrigation ditches thinned to threads, the topsoil hardened until boot heels struck it like fired clay. By the 3rd week, the wheat lost its color. By the 5th, entire fields turned silver, then brown. The new acres failed first. They had been broken fast, planted hard, and financed on hope. Their roots were shallow, their soil had no memory left in it. Then, the older fields began to fail too. Farmers drove the roads without speaking, staring through dusty windshields at land they had already promised to a plant, a lender, and a future that was no longer coming. That was when the county discovered the difference between profit and food. The previous harvest was gone, the reserve bins were empty. Families who had once kept grain for winter had sold it all into the boom. Money from the good years had not become safety, it had become payments. Machines, leases, fertilizer, and debt. The processing plant reduced its buying hours, the grocery store limited flour, rice, and bottled water. Feed prices jumped every few days. The rail company raised delivery fees because everyone was desperate at the same time. And Harbor Credit opened a new window for emergency loans. But these loans were different. Higher interest, shorter terms, more collateral. Land, equipment, water rights. Even future crop insurance checks. Men who had worn new boots in March stood in Voss's office by July with dust on their sleeves and foreclosure language in front of them. Some signed because their children needed food. Some signed because cattle needed feed. Some signed because pride lasts only until the pantry goes quiet. And then, one evening, a line formed outside Elias Mercer's feed mill. No one called it foolish anymore. They came in trucks, wagons, borrowed pickups and on foot. The same men who had laughed from their cabs stood under the repaired roof, hats in their hands, staring at the locked doors. Some expected Elias to refuse them, some expected him to charge whatever hunger would bear. Some expected a lecture. The steel latch turned, the door opened, and the laughter of the county died in their throats. Inside the old feed mill were rows upon rows of sealed wheat sacks, barrels of clean water, shelves of flour, beans, canned vegetables, salt, oil, lamp fuel, feed grain, seed grain, spare parts, and hand tools sorted with the patience of a man who had been building not a warehouse, but a lifeline. There was enough to keep families alive, not forever, but long enough for a county to stop bleeding. Elias stood beside a wooden table with a scale, a ledger, and a coffee can full of pencils. He did not ask who had mocked him. He did not ask who had bid against him. He did not mention the auction. He gave only one rule. Each household would receive what it needed. No more. No hoarding. No resale. No man with a bigger truck would eat before a woman with 3 children. The price was the old winter price, written from his ledger before the boom. For families with no cash, Elias wrote credit in pencil. Not mortgages, not liens, not deeds, just names, amounts, and a line at the top of every page. Pay after the land breeds again. That line traveled faster than the drought. By the second week, people from 3 townships were standing outside the mill before dawn. Elias worked until his hands shook. Widows helped measure flour. Retired mechanics repaired water pumps. Teenagers filled sacks. A schoolteacher organized ration cards so no household got counted twice. For the first time in months, the county was not acting like a market. It was acting like a place where people had to survive together. But one question followed Elias everywhere. How had he known? When the worst heat finally broke for a night, several town elders came to the mill after closing. Graham Voss came too, though he stood behind the others and said almost nothing. They found Elias sitting on an overturned crate, cleaning dust from the grain scale. The oldest woman in town asked him directly, "Elias, did you know this drought was coming?" He looked out through the open loading door at fields so dry they shone under the moon. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he reached into a drawer and pulled out his black ledgers. Not one, dozens. Year after year of rainfall notes, snowpack numbers, pond levels, planting dates, hot nights, wind direction, soil moisture, and harvest weights. Before Elias had come home to farm full-time, he had worked for the county extension office, maintaining weather gauges and soil stations across 3 counties. He had spent half his younger life walking fields after storms, measuring what the sky had given and what the ground had kept. He could not predict the exact day a drought would arrive, he told them that clearly. But he had seen the pattern. 2 wet years had made everyone careless, The shallow-rooted crops looked strong because the surface stayed kind. Upstream wells had been dropping. Winter snow had melted too fast. The spring winds had shifted early, and while the signs gathered quietly, the price board had become so bright that no one wanted to look away. "I didn't know the future," Elias said. "I only remembered that weather does not owe a boom anything." No one laughed. Not even Voss. Over the next months, the mill became the difference between losing land and keeping it. Some farmers still had to sell equipment, some had to shrink their operations, some carried debt that would take years to clear. But the worst did not happen. Families did not have to trade their farms for emergency flour, children did not go hungry while grain contracts failed, the lender did not take half the county in one summer because one old man had turned savings into shelter before shelter was needed. When rain finally returned, it did not arrive like a miracle, it came slowly. A gray morning. Then 2 days of steady water. Then the smell of wet dust rising from the roads. Then green pushing through places everyone had started to call dead. That autumn, Bellwether did something it had never done before any family counted profit, before any man talked expansion, before any loan officer spoke about opportunity, the town filled the old feed mill first. Every farm set aside a share, some gave wheat, some gave beans. Some gave canned goods. Some gave cash for repairs, some gave labor. The mill became a community reserve. Not because people had stopped wanting better lives, but because they had learned the cost of confusing a high price with a safe future. Gray and Voss eventually left Harbor Credit, Northern Plains Protein kept operating, but no one treated its contract like a promise from heaven anymore. And Elias Mercer went back to his quiet fields, his old ledger, and his habit of fixing small things before they became large ones. Years later, children who had been too young to understand the drought would ask why the town still kept grain in that weathered mill by the rail siding. Their parents would point to the patched roof. They would point to the scale. They would point to the line written above the ledger cabinet, copied from Elias's own hand. A price can rise in a day. A roof is built before the storm. And when Bellwether's price board finally went dark, the roof still held.